My name is Carrie Dorski. I am the Artist Center Operations Coordinator. I have been at the center for over 2 years now in this role. And An Artist Journey is a series that we do each month focused on kind of entrepreneurship. And so we feature artists like we're doing tonight with Jenna. We feature some kind of business topics, local arts organizations, all kinds of things. And tonight we are going to feature Jenna Kast. She's here with us from her studio. Jenna and I met last week, and we're going to keep this really informal. She's got a lot to share, but please, while we're chatting, feel free to unmute yourself, chime in, ask questions, or feel free to drop them in the chat and I will read them out loud. We kind of want to keep this conversational and fun, and Jenna's a wealth of knowledge, so feel free to use this time to ask her a bunch of questions. On that note, I am going to turn it over to Jenna. And Jenna, I do have your website queued up and those pictures you sent. So anytime you want me to put them on the screen, just let me know.
Okay, yeah. I mean, whenever works for you. I don't know how like the WebEx thing works. Like I'm used to Zoom and I'm used to Microsoft Teams, but this is a new one for me. So whenever you feel like showing them, you can. I'll give a quick background. So if anybody watching has any questions, like Carrie said, please put them in the chat because then it means that I don't have to think of things to say by myself for the whole hour because we could get into some crazy tangents. So short-ish version of my story. I live and work in Green Bay. My studio that I'm in is in my house. We moved into this house about 3 years ago and we had this sort of weird storage room in the basement. And then when the stay-at-home orders happened, my husband and I renovated it into a studio. So that's where I work from. I have been artistic my whole life, but never really pursued art as a career. I went to school for advertising and public relations, and I worked in marketing for 10 plus years. So that is sort of the world that I'm coming from. I started like painting and like doing various artistic things again as an adult to help me deal with anxiety because it felt like it was a really good release for me and it occupied my mind. So it really helped with that aspect of my mental health. And then in early 2019, I started abstract painting just kind of for fun and sharing about it on my Instagram. And I had a lot of people really interested in what I was doing and almost like immediately asking if I was selling things before I even, really knew what I was doing. So I really just kind of stumbled into this out of something that I loved, which is great, I think. And I took 2019 to sort of learn and work and, just really throw myself into it. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, it was a little strange because I was just starting to learn what, working as an artist meant and being able to sell my work and where I sold it. But fortunately, people really embraced artists and purchasing art throughout that year and continuing now. And I'm sure a lot of you who are watching who are artists had a lot of things change for you too in terms of how your work sold and how you reached people. So yeah, the past few years have been really awesome and really crazy. I feel like I'm on a roller coaster sometimes with how fast everything happened. But yeah, today I am a full-time artist. I left my other job for good in December of last year. So I just started on my 4th month as a full-time artist, and I specialize in large-scale, really colorful abstracts. So yeah, I spend my days working from my office at home and my studio, and sometimes my husband's studio if my paintings are too large to do here in this space because it's kind of limited. But yeah, that's kind of a quick overview of where I am now and how I got here.
I'm going to pull up some of your pictures so if people aren't familiar, they can see some of these.
Yeah, I sent over some pictures of like some of my recent work, things that I've completed this year so far. I also have, if you're in town, I have some artwork hanging at the attic right now, and that will be up through the end of April. And then I have a solo show. Oh, there, my dog's freaking out. And then I have a solo show in June at the Art Garage. So those are my two scheduled exhibitions in the area.
You just let me know if you want me to flip through these or if you want to talk about them. You are
Yeah, if
seeing
you
it,
want to,
right?
yep, I can see it. Yeah, if you want to flip through, so that one's in my studio. So luckily I have this like little area behind me on the wall where I can take some photos. Some of these pieces I still have, some are with collectors. But yeah, I started focusing on the large scale work in um, early September of last year. I did a mural downtown during the Mural and Busker Festival last August. And it was my first time ever painting a mural, and it was like a really cool experience. And I think in painting it, I kind of realized that I really like painting large scale. So since then, I've been focusing mainly on these larger pieces. I always like whenever I share actual videos of my studio, people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's so much smaller than it looks in photos." And it really is. It's, kind of a small space, but I like having this dedicated place in my home where I can just like come down here in sweatpants and work.
For sure. It's nice that you can make a mess in there. This is my kind of studio, which is just a bedroom. And I'm always like, okay, I got to make sure I don't make too big of a mess.
Yeah, I'm lucky that I can make a mess in here because I feel like for me, making a mess is an essential part of the creative process. So like sometimes if I have a really big commission, I'll paint at my husband's studio because there's more space, but then I always feel like, oh, I can't get a drop of paint anywhere. So I like it here because if I drop some paint on the floor, it's not a big deal.
Especially when you're working that large, I can imagine it's hard to not make a mess.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, I did last week. I did some live painting at Voyagers downtown, and I was so proud of myself because like live painting, you have to wear real clothes. Like I can't wear my sweatpants and like my normal painting clothes. And I didn't get a single drop of paint on my nice clothes. So I had to high five myself for that one.
That's amazing. I was working on a small, I think it's like 12 by 18 piece, like right here last night, and I still had paint everywhere. It's like tiny and
Yeah,
controlled, but
yeah,
still made a mess.
yeah. I've been known to drag my sleeves through. That'll
For,
happen.
yo, is that metallic on this one?
It is, yeah. A lot of my pieces incorporate metallics. I don't know, just because I'm extra. I don't know. I just like adding metallics because it adds an extra dimension to it. And I'm all about the materials. Before I started painting abstract work was always my favorite. And I love pieces where you can see the globs of paint and see the textures and see, maybe even figure out what brushes artists used or how they made the marks. So I really enjoy that material aspect of it. So I like adding, thick globs of paint, and I like using metallics because I think they add to the story of the piece and they give little interesting areas to look at.
For sure. Did you, so are you considered yourself like a self-taught artist, or did you take any classes, or how did you just like come to be a painter?
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself self-taught. I didn't take any art classes. even, beyond the basics in high school. But I mean, I have worked as a graphic designer for however many years. So I think that that plays into it a lot in terms of my color selection. My color usage is something that a lot of people comment on. And I think part of that comes from my design background, like the aspects of composition as well. So it's a little weird because, I'm not a classically trained artist. I didn't go to art school, but I did have this experience working in this visual field for many years. So it's weird to like have graphic design translate into abstract artwork, but it kind of has for me, um, which I think is why I've kind of been able to make that transition.
For sure. I think there's a ton of crossover there. I've dabbled in both my whole entire career, and there's a ton of the same kind of design elements and a lot of composition rules and color theory,
Yeah.
all of that. So,
Yeah, you'd really be surprised, how I always like encourage people to try different creative pursuits. If your thing is painting, trying things like sewing or, something that's still creative but out of the normal realm. I think it really helps get your juices flowing when you go back to like your core creative pursuit.
I totally agree. I think that's great advice. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to chime in, unmute yourself, and ask away. Otherwise, put them in the chat. Otherwise, I did make a list of questions. I kind of always do.
Yes, please ask me questions.
Along that same note, so I've noticed that you have a great social media and web presence, and I
Mhm.
think that's something that a lot of artists struggle with. But now it makes sense knowing that that's your background. Do you think that that has helped you be successful and help you like reach new audiences, or can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think that that has helped immensely. It's kind of funny. I've noticed, not just within artistic circles, but social media circles in general. Whenever you see someone in an industry that kind of tends to come to the top of their industry on social platforms, that person almost always has a background in marketing. And I think it's just having, that experience of like understanding how to talk to people, draw them in, copywriting, understanding how, there's so many things that I design that I use for my business, like that is helpful. Just understanding the background of how algorithms work on social platforms and on the internet in general is helpful. Um, so yeah, it's something that I talk with other artists about too. Um, because everyone comes from different backgrounds and, some people might not be as comfortable on social platforms. I recently taught a class about running ads on Instagram. And it's interesting to like see everyone's perspective on it. And I still have people who are like, I just had someone DM me the other day that they were starting to run ads based on my class and they were excited about it. So I don't talk about that as much on my platform, but maybe I should. But yeah, I love like talking with other artists about that aspect of the business. Because unless you work in marketing or you kind of have that firsthand knowledge, I don't know, there are things that you can't really take advantage of unless you know these little pathways. So I definitely think that that has given me a leg up on social platforms, um, just because of my background knowledge of, the algorithms and how social works.
For sure. I noticed I was poking around your website, and I don't remember if it was this week or last week. And even the way you talk about your artwork. So I think it was on the page with the prints that you're selling right now. And
Mhm.
it had like the title of each piece and kind of the inspiration and about it. I find that artists don't love to talk about what they're making, but seeing that on your website, I was like, oh my gosh, where's my credit card? You know what I mean? Like it really sells the artwork. It makes it so much more personal and kind of
Mhm.
humanizes the process that it was really I was like super impressed. So I dropped the link in for everybody here if you guys want to poke around Jenna's website. Um, it's beautiful and very well done.
Thank you.
But yeah, for sure. So the part I'm referencing is that she's got prints for sale right now. And I am navigating to that page right now. Jenna, do you want to talk about your print release a little bit?
Sure. So like I mentioned before, my dogs are just going crazy up there. So I'm sorry. This
I
just
can't hear them at all. So,
okay, good. I'm so
yep.
glad. It sounds like there are elephants stomping around above me. So like I mentioned before, um, I specialize in large scale original paintings. That is really where my heart is at as far as creating art. I feel like that's how my style shines best. Um, so I've experimented with prints in the past because I have people who ask about it. And I know, original artwork isn't always accessible to everyone. So I really wanted to have another option, especially now that I'm painting large scale primarily. But like I also talked about, I like the material and the physical aspect of paintings. So I kind of grappled with if I even wanted to do prints because I wanted them to, feel special and be like works of art on their own. And over the past year, I've kind of observed ways that other artists have done print releases. And I am an art collector too. I have originals and prints from a bunch of artists who I love. And when there's an artist that you love, buying their print feels special too, not just buying the original. So I decided to release prints, but keep it really limited and really special. So I do print releases twice a year, once in March, once in September. Um, there are only 3 options. They're only available for a week. So all of the prints are limited edition, signed, numbered, just to keep them like a special moment that you only get at this one, period in time. So the September print release will be 3 totally different prints that will only be available for that week. So that was kind of how I reconciled keeping it special. And then, of course, the prints, I've done so much testing, and the prints and the paper, I feel like are on par with what I want to put out into the world. So I feel really good about these prints and, having them be these special little moments that people can collect if they, follow me and want some work on paper or something that's smaller. Because like the painting that's up right now, the real painting is 48 by 60. So a lot of people don't have that space in their homes. Um, so it's kind of a way to collect something in a smaller little nugget that, fits better into a lot of people's homes.
That's a great point. So this is what I was talking about when I was like just kind of scrolling around and I was like, this is a beautiful description. And it tells you exactly what you're getting and that it's being professionally printed. That really spoke to me. And then also from the business aspect of things, how many hours did you put into the original? You as an artist, you pour yourself into that original and then you
Mhm.
make one sale off of it. So if you can kind of bring in more income for the work you're putting in, why not do that? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It makes good business sense.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of artists do prints. Some choose not to, which I can totally understand because it took a lot for me to get to that point. But one of my main concerns too is that I have a lot of people who have followed my career since it started and who, would love to collect my work, but it would never, it's too large for their home. Budgetarily, it doesn't work out. And I know for me, like I said, I'm an art collector too. There are so many artists out there who I would love to have their originals, but I can't afford them, nor do I have space in my house to put them. But when they have a print release, like that's a little part of it, like a little piece of it that I can actually get because I have a place to put, I have a place to put a 24 by 24 print. I don't have a place to put, a 4 foot by 6 foot painting. So, I don't want to be inaccessible to people. I want there to be a way where, if an artist is special to you and their work is special to you, that you can get it somehow.
I love that. And I think it's so important. And when we talk to different artists, I think that's something that everyone should keep in mind is that, you should price your work for what it's worth and not undersell yourself and the quality of the work you're producing. You can find other ways to kind of target market those other people and make sure that you are accessible to everybody. There's other ways to do that rather than lowering your prices.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah,
love this kind of creative way of doing that.
yeah, that's a really good point. Because it's something that I think a lot of artists struggle with. I know I did when I made the transition to painting large scale work, or even, as my prices have increased throughout my career, you feel bad that you might be excluding people. Like I don't want to do that. I don't make art for the money, but then again, I also like have to, pay my mortgage and buy dog food and all that stuff. So it's a good way to, still keep something that's accessible, but to make work now that is the way that I want to make it.
For sure. I'm going to make one more note about this. I love how personal your website is. And I love that there's these little notes from you and there's pictures of you, and it really kind of tells the story of who you are and makes that, I'm going to say, that human connection again. I absolutely love that. And I think that's missing from a lot of artists' websites and sometimes even artists' social media. I'll find an artist-based business that has a different name than their own. And I'm like, who's the person behind this? Who's doing this? I want to see their face. I want to know who they are. And you can't find them. So I kind of love this human aspect of like, I can picture you working on this, and I know that you're the one putting in all of the work and doing the artwork and coming up with these ideas. And it really makes, like, as an art collector myself, like, want to support you, right? Because I'm like, oh, I know who she is and I know how much work she's doing, and look how thoughtful she is. So
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
just
I think
about your, sorry, I was just gonna
that's
say,
the
I'm
nice
just gonna
thing.
rave about your website all night.
Well, I mean, that's the nice thing too about, being, I know like social media isn't everyone's thing. Um, and it can be, maybe not a positive place for some people, depending on, what your experience is and what you get served on social media. But for me, I'm friends with other artists on the other side of the world because of Instagram. One of my good friends is an artist in Australia, and I just bought my first original from her, which I'm so excited about. And that would never happen without social media and without those personal connections. But the way people are collecting art nowadays is so different from how they used to even 5 years ago. People want those personal connections, and millennials are the biggest group of art buyers now. And, you know, despite like all of the rumors that millennials just want to like text people and never see them, and like, like we care about personal connections and connecting with people, even if it is digitally and not in person. So, having those connections is so important, um, especially when you're collecting something as meaningful as art. People connect with it emotionally. So to be able to, see who the artist is and connect with them personally is like an added bonus.
And if you're gonna look at it all day long in your house, you might as well know you like the person behind it, right? Like,
Right, exactly. And you can, DM them anytime and like have conversations with them, which is so cool. I talk to people every day who have purchased my work, who have taken my classes, who like have followed me but never said hi before, but then they, message me and we start talking, which is really cool because that's, how else do you have that connection with artists? You can go to galleries and artist receptions, but there's something personal about, you know, seeing how artists work in their space and having those private conversations with them. That's just really cool.
Totally agree. I wrote down also, and next to where I wrote down prints, I wrote down bookmarks, and I just saw it on your website, so it made me think of it. Can you talk about your bookmarks?
Sure. So that was something that I started super randomly. I think I actually have some right here. So here, I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I had just some spare canvas in my studio. It was like, you know, something that it was just like a scrap of something. And I was like, I wish I could use this for something. Like it wasn't big enough to stretch into a painting. Um, I was like, I wonder like, you know, what I could do with canvas. And then bookmarks came to mind, like for whatever reason. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to like paint this and then you could put it in a book and use it as a bookmark. So I had, you know, a few little scraps of canvas. So I painted on them and, you know, did my first release of bookmarks. And it was like, people loved it. Like, you know, they get this like little thing that they can put in their book. And it's just like, I don't know, it's fun and it's cute. And, you know, there's not the commitment of buying a big art piece and it's not this big fancy thing. It's just a little, you know, something to add beauty and fun to what you're doing every day. So yeah, I started doing these. I release them maybe twice a year. I don't do them very often. It's literally just when I have scraps of something in my studio that I don't want to throw out. I'll, you know, maybe add some more splatters to them and then cut them up and do another round of bookmarks. So yeah, I still have a few left from the last release, but yeah, it's kind of random, but
I love
yeah.
that. I think it's so creative, and it's nice to do something that's kind of functional rather than just something you put up on your wall. I love that kind of incorporated
Yeah.
into your everyday. We do have a question in the chat. Kate says, do you have your printing done locally or online? And how did you decide on quality of paper the prints are on?
Mhm. So I have my printing done online. I use a company called G Clay Today, and I use them because I collected a print from an artist that I follow on Instagram, and I got it, and its quality was amazing. Like it was a print on canvas, just flat canvas that was unstretched, and it was so gorgeous. So because we were already talking and having conversations, I was like, this print is beautiful. Like, if you don't mind me asking, where do you get them made? Because I've been, you know, toying with the idea of doing prints, but, you know, doing just randomly doing things can be an expensive investment. So she told me that she worked with them. So I did some test prints. Like over the past couple years, I've done a few prints here and there with them, um, mostly just for testing purposes, trying out their different materials. You can get sample packs too of different papers from printing companies. And then when I decided to do prints the way I do them now, I knew I wanted to get a really nice, high quality paper. So basically, I just chose the paper that I thought would be best. Um, you know, I've seen some of their papers before. I also went just onto YouTube and Googled G Clay Today prints because there are people that have had stuff printed there and review it and they talk about the paper and like, you know, Google it when in doubt, right? So yeah, I chose the paper that I thought would be a good fit, had some test prints made, really love the paper. It's like nice and heavy, not overly thick, but it has a good weight to it and it has like just enough texture. So I really liked it. So that's what I chose. And then, yeah, I got some test prints made of the specific prints that I was doing for this release, just to make sure everything looked okay, and it did. So that's kind of just my process, is just informing myself based on conversations with other artists, Googling things, and just getting test prints made. I know a lot of artists locally use Ink Drop Art House, and I considered using them. The only reason I don't is that I don't need reproductions of my work made because my husband is a photographer and he photographs all my work. So if I had to have like scans or something made, working with InkDrop or a place like it would make more sense. But yeah, this way I can just upload my files and have it printed, and it works out super nicely.
That was literally going to be my next question, was how do you photograph or scan it? So that's good to know. I'm glad you answered that. I think that's a tough one for people that are trying to photograph their own work, and sometimes you get the glare and the lighting and all of that. And we did have an artist journey talking about photographing your work, but if you are looking for reproduction, sometimes scanning is the best option. And I think
Yeah.
InkDrop is one of the only places in town that does that and does small runs with individual artists. So
Yeah. I mean, I've seen other artists' work that they get done there, and it's really impressive. So, I think that they are really doing an amazing thing there. And I've had several people DM me on Instagram about my process for making prints, how I photograph my work, and um, I feel bad saying like I can't really help you with that, but like my husband is a professional photographer, so he has skills that I do not. So like he lights everything and he has, amazing skills. So he captures the texture and everything in the prints. So I feel like I'm not the one that can give tips on how to do this because that's his thing and his expertise. I just get to benefit from it. So, but yeah, if you don't have something like that at your disposal, which most people don't, working with people who understand how to replicate the colors and the texture of art is always going to be a safe bet.
especially for reproduction, it's one of those things like sometimes you're just better off paying somebody else to do it. And in your case, you just luckily married the person that can do it for you.
Right? Yes, yeah, he photographs my paintings for prints and for the listings on my website. And then I do graphic design stuff for his business. So it's like a trade-off.
That's perfect. I feel like you were totally set up to succeed in the art world.
I just like have all of these random tools and people around me.
It's good. Surround yourself with those kinds of people. I made another note kind of related to your website, but I noticed that when I first clicked on it earlier today to get it pulled up, it popped up and asked me if I wanted to sign up for your VIP list. Can you tell us what that is?
So it's my newsletter, my email newsletter, which I say newsletter, but it's not like I'm sending a thing out every month that's, perfectly formulated, but it's basically just my email list. So I just call it my VIPs because it's, people who care enough to get regular updates about, what the heck I'm doing and, when things come out. So yeah, I have an email list that I started, gosh, a couple of years ago now. And it's just a nice way for me to like reach the people that care about the stuff that I have going on, which is really cool. I have my following on Instagram has grown, which is great, but it's so hard to reach people one-on-one on social media, especially now as your following grows, it's harder and harder to reach those people. So, through my email list, it allows me to make sure that I'm getting them the information that they care about as someone who follows me. So, for example, this print release, I'm able to send out emails saying, hey, like this is coming up, it's starting now, or like, this is your last day to order things. Or when I have events coming up, like my solo show, or even, this chat I've sent out information about to my email list. And it's also a fun way for me to kind of reward the people who, support me, either just through, following what I'm doing or purchasing my work, because I can send out like little discount codes or like little fun things for them. So I like being able to do fun stuff. I try, not to spam people too much with emails because I have an inbox too and I know how that goes. But yeah, I try to just like really keep it to the important stuff that I want people to know about.
And a tidbit for all of you, Americans for the Arts basically said that if you don't have an email newsletter, you are missing out on a lot of business. So it's a very good thing to do. It kind of does give you that human connection. And then in relation to that, what platform do you use for your email newsletter? Do you use one of the big ones?
I use MailerLite, which I've used several different email platforms just like as part of my marketing career. And MailerLite is my favorite, just because it's so simple and easy to use. Like I'm a big visual person, obviously, but if a website is like overly complicated or convoluted, like it just bothers me. So their interfaces are very clean. It's very clear what to do if you're not, if you don't have experience with email marketing or sending email newsletters. It's very simple and easy to use. And so I really like it. It's a free service until you get up to, so many subscribers. Um, so yeah, I've really enjoyed using it. I've used it for, gosh, a couple of years now, I think.
Cool. That's one that I haven't used. I've used like Constant Contact and MailChimp. We use Salesforce right now. So there's a few of them I've tried, but I've never used that one. So that's a good tip. I'm gonna look through my questions here because I don't see anything else coming in. Can you talk to us about, sorry, did you say something or did
I was
somebody
just
else
gonna
say
say,
something?
please leave questions.
I have a few, but they're probably not as exciting as the things you guys want to know from her. Can you talk about your collectors and kind of cultivating a following? I noticed on your website, I think near the bottom, it said something about how you have collectors in different places.
hmm Yeah, it's like really, it's almost weird to talk about because, in this day and age when you can reach anybody through social media, it still almost like feels weird that you talk to people all over the world and you're just here and it's weird. Anyway, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, well, all of it is due to Instagram. I've had an Instagram account forever because, I'm a millennial, but when I started posting my artwork and when that turned into an art business, you connect with people um, who follow you because of your work. You connect with other artists, and it just kind of snowballs. And one of the things that I talk about in my Instagram advertising class is using Instagram ads to reach people who aren't in your immediate geographic area. I think that's one of the big advantages for artists on social media. I know a lot of people are turned off by advertising on social media because they feel like, well, why am I giving you money to show my posts to people who want to see them anyway? But it's really not for that purpose. It's for the purpose of reaching new people. And I mean, for your dollar as a business owner, there's no better way to reach people across the country, across the globe, than running ads on social media. But basically, I in 2020 started, putting some advertising dollars behind it, which on Instagram is basically just boosting posts. You select your audiences, and it just allows you to get your content exposed to people who wouldn't normally be in your circles or in your web. And yeah, I have, my work is with collectors all over the country. Like I like to say, from Seattle to San Diego and Maine to Miami, because it's literally all over. And that's 100% because of social media and being able to reach people in those places.
I think that's really cool. And it really speaks to your social media skills. Um, I'm going to ask a question that I didn't have on my list because I'm very curious. Do you, like, as you're kind of navigating this full time as an artist, what are you communicating? Are you replying to all of your DMs? Are you like constantly on your phone, or do you have different boundaries or like off limits times or things like that?
Well, I try to. I'm not always successful. I am on my phone probably more than most people, but my business is run on my phone. I think we would all just love to be in our studios painting all day. But like the reality of, having in our business that's primarily, through social channels is, people want to see what you're up to. So, I might be painting in my studio all day, but I'll be, on my stories, I'll be posting photos. And it just helps kind of build that community with people. So yeah, I am on my phone a fair bit. Um, but for me, it just kind of feels natural. It's just part of my process. If I'm in the studio painting, when I'm excited about something or I'm like, ooh, like I want to show people this because it's cool or it's fun. I just post a quick story. So, it's just kind of part of my flow at this point. And then I do try, in terms of answering DMs, it depends if I'm like busy at the time or if not, but I try to get back to them. I try to get back to people within 24 hours. And emails, I try to get to my emails every work day at least once. But weekends and evenings, I try to shut it off and um, not work just for sanity's sake. But
Yep. We had Frank Juarez here with us for Artist Journey last month, and he said the same thing, that he has a 24-hour rule for his kind of emails and communications. And I think that's great advice for people. It doesn't have to be immediate, but also you don't want to forget about it for 3 weeks.
right. Yeah, and I think there's, especially when like you're starting out, there's, a compulsion to respond to people immediately. I think that's even the case, when people text you. You feel like you have to reply immediately. Um, but I think over time you can sort of train yourself to like train away that urgency a little bit. Um, so like while still being responsive, you can keep your sanity and not feel like you are constantly replying to someone.
For sure. And I think it's a good point to like kind of keep the flow or kind of keep your phone or your whatever as part of your process. I think maybe that's easier as millennials because I even kind of use my phone as a tool, right? Like I'll take a picture of a painting I'm working on and then I'll look at it differently. You can kind of zoom in on it, you can get a different perspective and use it as a tool that way. But then also
Mm-hmm.
you might have taken a great post or a great video to be able to share with your followers. So
Yeah.
I know some people are really aversive to like, I don't want to get out of my flow. I don't want to get out of what I'm doing to be able to create content to share with people. But if you can kind of make it part of your process and kind of incorporate it in what you do, maybe it is easier. Maybe it does start to come more naturally. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of organically creating that content to share with people.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it.
I have a couple of more kind of generic questions, but do you have anything you're like really super proud of, or any kind of big sale or big moment in your career that you are super proud of?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Um, I think, there are always like new sales milestones when, your business is growing. And that's always important because, number one, it means that you can sustain your business. But number two, it's, this fun marker of like, I'm creating this cool work. Like people are spending their hard-earned money on this work, which is amazing. So it's a nice sort of validation to have these, sales goals being met or, being exceeded. But I think on a personal note, the decision that I made in August to switch to doing large scale work and, kind of sticking with that and finding my flow with that, I'm really proud of myself for doing that because it was incredibly scary at the time, to think, I have this growing art business. Um, I almost felt like maybe I was going to be throwing part away because I was going to be moving to this format that I knew was going to be inaccessible for a lot of people, which is always scary because I don't want to alienate people who, have followed me and collected my work in the past. But, I'm also like, yes, I'm a working artist, and yes, this is how I make my living. But if I'm not doing it in the way that I want to, in the way that I connect with the most, then what, I don't ever want to just make art for the money or for the business aspect of it. And I knew in my heart, like, these large scale pieces are, where my head is at, where my heart is at. It's how my work looks the best, I think. There's just the freedom of the big canvas. So it's been really scary to make a decision that seemingly severe at the time. But yeah, the support that I've had from collectors and from everyone since I've made this switch has been amazing. So no regrets.
That's awesome. I was just thinking as you were talking about that, like, yeah, you can't just pick up 60-inch canvases and bring them down to a farmer's market, right? It's not
Yeah,
something that
yeah,
you
it
can
changes
just
a
like,
lot about your business.
for sure. We do have a question in the comments from Carrie, and she said, how do you decide what to charge for your original artwork?
Okay,
It's always a
so
tough question.
it is. So I'll try to answer it as concisely as possible, but basically the way that I price my work is based on the size in square inches. So I have my formula of how I price work. So it depends on sort of overall size and then price per square inch. I actually have, like, I feel bad, like, I'm not trying to plug the stuff that I have, but I specifically wrote a workbook on pricing your artwork, that
Awesome.
kind of explains how I go about it, because I think too, being from a marketing background and sort of understanding the product aspect of it, um, people ask how I price my work, and I tell them based on the square inches. But there's so much more that goes into it in terms of, okay, well, like, where do I start? Like, what's the price per square inch? How do I know when I need to raise my prices? And I think that's the thing too. I've seen people ask other artists on Instagram, like, how do you price your work? And for most artists, it's based on square inches. But figuring out the aspects of, who your market is, who you're selling to, what is a good price to start at, what's your formula, like, all of that stuff is, normally things that you have to figure out on your own as you go, or like by looking at similar artists to see what they're doing. So I do decide, or the rate is determined by the size of the piece in square inches. But in terms of what I charge and what my formula is, it's something that is always changing based on where I feel like my skill is at and where the demand for my work is at. And over the past sort of 2.5 years that my business has been growing, I've changed my prices a lot. Because I think, no matter what industry you're in as a creative, there's nothing worse than underpricing yourself. Because not only are you cheating yourself out of, having a fair price, but there might be artists who, are at a similar skill level as you, but their work is priced more because it's what it should be at. And then your work is priced less. And then, it creates confusion among collectors too, because they're like, oh, well, why is this person's work so much more and yours is so much less? So I think it's really important to pay attention to who your artistic peers are in terms of skill level, in terms of, who you sell your work to, and sort of stay on par with everyone so there are no like big peaks and dips in artwork value. So it just makes it easier for everyone, I think.
I agree. And that's always the point. like to bring up is that I feel like it happens a lot, especially in kind of Green Bay or in smaller cities where artists are kind of up and coming. There's a lot of that. You'll go to events like Art Street or Gallery Night and any of those things, and you'll see a variety of prices for sure. And it's really difficult, I think, when you see like two different mugs next to each other and one's $50 and one's $12. Like, what is the difference? And so that's a big one. And we did cover a whole pricing hour in an artist's journey it's on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. And Michelle Zala-Winter talks a lot about her formula and how she makes sure she covers things like, continuing education classes and studio expenses and mileage to drive, there's all those things to kind of factor in. But I love how you think about it more as the market and your peers. That's kind of two sides to the coin, right? It's like your expenses, your time and everything you put into it. But then you have to look at who your competition is, who you are, who your peers are. It's kind of an interesting topic. And I think that there's never going to be a straight answer of here's how you price your artwork.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's, some people too, I think there's almost like a sense of guilt about like raising your prices or charging a certain amount for your work. And I can totally understand that. But I think, if you never raise your prices to where they should be, then you never get to meet your ideal collector and you never get to really make what your work is worth. So, can you overprice yourself? Absolutely. But if you find that sweet spot in pricing, you get to make what you deserve for your work. And someone out there is going to be willing to pay it because they love your work and it's, it's deserving of that price you have on it. So yeah, it's a hard topic to talk about because there's no one right thing that works for everyone. But yeah, I just hope people, will charge what their work is worth instead of like, what you feel okay accepting, because it can be hard to ask for your fair value, I guess.
And don't be afraid to tweak and raise your prices.
Mm-hmm.
If everything is selling like crazy and you think you might be underselling yourself, raise your prices for your next event or your next release. There's no harm in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has anybody given you any really standout advice? Any mentors or anything like that?
I don't know that there's been any specific words of wisdom that I want to embroider on something and have in my home. But I think being able to have connections, like actual conversations with other accomplished artists that I admire, and to have them, complement aspects of my work or the way that I do business is so meaningful because, on one hand, it's someone that you admire, who's making amazing work and they take time out to say something about your work. It feels so good. But it also kind of lets you know that you're on the right path, right? Like if someone who does amazing work that you admire, who's an accomplished artist, if they, compliment your work or whatever it is, you're like, okay, that's the validation that I need to know that I'm not just throwing darts at the wall. But I think a lot of it too is, especially when you are in a small town and there are maybe not as many artists doing your specific type of work, it can be hard to have those, artist groups where you give each other feedback. I think a lot of the general stuff is helpful. But yeah, it can be hard to get that very specific feedback from your, sort of narrow niche of peers. Which again is, I think something that I've been able to find through social media, which has been super helpful for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that kind of lean into your social networks and really network with the people you admire, right? We have about 5 minutes left. I like to keep us really on time. So if anybody else has any lingering questions on their mind, please feel free to unmute or drop them in the chat. I have a couple more written down. Actually, I think we might have crossed them all off. So we're getting pretty close here, but I want to make sure you all have a chance to ask Jenna anything you've been thinking while we've been chatting. So I'm gonna be quiet for about 30 seconds to see if anybody pops in. Okay, that's one of the hardest things for me to do on virtual meetings. I always feel like I need to fill the empty space. So I do have a dog who wants to join us right now. My last question, since we don't have anybody else chiming in, is how do you continue to find and kind of feed your inspiration or your ideas for your paintings?
That's a good question. I feel like whenever I'm like fish for questions on Instagram, like that's one that I get pretty often. And I think for me, with the way that I create being intuitive and I'm very much like channeling my emotions and moods. When I'm inspired, I feel like I can just keep creating forever. But sometimes that tank sort of runs dry. So one of the hardest lessons that I've learned as a working artist is how much you need to rest and how much you need to do other things that have nothing to do with painting. For me, that's travel. It's, just getting out and having experiences. Um, because it's mentally and physically draining to be bringing these things to fruition all of the time. You're essentially taking what's in your head and pouring it out. So if you don't replenish that with something else, like you burn out so hard. When I first started, I actually went to part-time at my job before I cut off completely. And I like one of the first things when I like really started ramping up my business is I would paint a collection, over 8 or 6 weeks, and then I would release it. And then the week after, I would like crash, like just physically crash. Like, sometimes I'd just be so like emotional because I was so spent in every possible way that I just like was a wreck sometimes. And that I've over the past couple years, I've learned a lot about how I work, and I can stay in a creative flow best when I'm taking a lot of time to rest and have other experiences. So I probably, and when I say rest, I mean like actually physically resting and not doing anything, but I also mean, like going on walks or traveling or whatever it is. But I probably rest as much as I create. And for me, that's the right ratio of, being able to keep myself replenished so I don't burn out, and have those, periods of a week or 2 weeks where I just can't make anything. So, I think it's different for everyone, but it's been a big learning experience for me because the type of work that you do as an artist is so different from any other type of work I've done in my life. I mean, I've, had a full-time job since I graduated college. But this is a totally different type of work that exhausts you in different ways. So I think you just have to listen to your body and your brain and know how to hold back when you need to and know how to rest so that you are able to kind of keep that, state of creating.
I kind of love that that's the last thing we're talking about because I think it's so important, and especially kind of coming out of this pandemic, if we are coming out of it, like everybody's kind of taking time and kind of reflecting and taking better care of themselves. I hope maybe that's the good thing of this, and being really kind of self-aware of how much of yourself you're putting into your artwork and balancing that and taking good care of your mental health. I think that's really, really good advice. So thank you.
Absolutely.
If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to chime in real quick. Otherwise, I'm going to shut it down. We'll say goodbye. We'll get the recording posted up on our social media. But thank you, Jenna. Thank you all for being here. Please check out Jenna's website. Again, I can't stop talking about it. It's beautiful. So thanks, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everybody for attending.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.